Okay, let's keep this short and to the point, shall we? I'm leaving America. Okay, so I might struggle a little bit here, but I'm gonna try to keep this simple and clear and concise. There might be some people who know me from outside of the tube of views who are a little, might be upset that I haven't mentioned this to basically anyone. But the reason for that is that we didn't really know what was happening. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's been a very emotional yo-yo of will I, won't I, and I didn't want to drag anyone through that yes, no, maybe process until I had figured it out for myself, and I have. So surprise, I'm leaving America. And no, this is not one of those videos where people say, "Oh, America's so bad. I'm gonna move to Canada." Because I'm not moving to Canada. It's cold, and poutine is not good enough for me to move to Canada. Uh, Free healthcare and education are, but I'm not a Canadian citizen. I am, however, a Swedish citizen. I should backtrack. Okay, so for those who don't know, I have a background in science. I actually got a degree in business with a minor of healthcare as opposed to the other way around because there's more that you can do with a business degree than there is that you can do with a generic biology or healthcare degree, especially in America. A lot of jobs in the healthcare industry require additional certification, and anything involving a lab is pretty much off limits unless you have a graduate degree of some kind. And that's always been way beyond my reach financially, so a business degree seemed like the best bet. Over the last few years, I've been going back and forth to Sweden with my dad and slowly improving my Swedish. But the last time I was there, someone mentioned that there are actually courses on college campuses that teach Swedish, and because I'm a citizen, they would be free. So I took a look at that, and it didn't really work with my schedule, unfortunately, but it was a cool option. So I clicked around in there a little bit, and there was, in fact, a couple of degree programs that I thought looked interesting. I was just window shopping, really, because my Swedish is terrible, in case I didn't make that clear. Like, I can speak with a 3-year-old. 4-year-old, no, that's too complicated. 3-year-old is where I'm at. And obviously, any kind of advanced degree program would require a level of competency in Swedish that I don't have. My dad was sort of looking at the programs over my shoulder and was like, "Oh, well, wouldn't that be something that you would want to do?" And I was like, "No, because I don't speak Swedish." But as it so happens, the vast majority of science programs operate predominantly in English. But even if the course material was in English, if some of the lectures were in Swedish or the group discussions were in Swedish, I would be so far behind that there was no way for me to catch up. However, the program that I was looking at in Sweden, however, one of the programs that I was looking at in Sweden had a master's degree in experimental sciences entirely in English. And I wasn't the best of student in college. It did take me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. Part of that was financial and part of that was mental health. I mean, schools aren't cheap in America, which is something we've already established, but also by the end of 10 years, taking credit after credit after credit and burning out halfway through the semester because I was working too much and not being able to keep up with the course load, it takes a toll. So there was a good 2 years in there where I wasn't in school at all. But I did finish. I have my bachelor's. It's not very useful to me as it is. So I stayed working in the jobs that I was in because I make pretty decent money tutoring, and the bakery's a nice morning job that does not conflict with any tutoring or babysitting hours. So I was coasting. Enter the Swedish conversation. Eventually, I did reach out to the school and I sort of asked what the standards were because it's a little different between Swedish schools and American schools, so that was tricky to figure out. But I submitted paperwork, they looked over my grades, they said that yeah, I met the bare minimum to apply. And I was like, "Oh, cool." But like everybody knows, if you meet the bare minimum in America, you're not getting in. Like if they say 3.2, you need to have a 3.8. If they say you need 10 hours a week of extracurriculars, you need to have 20. The school systems here are incredibly competitive, and because they all cost money and there's so much invested in it financially, that's just the way it is. Sweden's a little different because it's free. Well, at least to me. Again, citizen. Note the blonde hair and very pale skin. So I went ahead, I submitted paperwork. They said I met the bare minimum to apply, so I came back to the States and I thought about it for a while. And I decided, you know what? It doesn't actually cost me anything to apply, so I went ahead and applied. I did it wrong, so then I got bumped back to the bottom of the list, but let's be honest, that's where I was to begin with anyways. And in the meantime, I started to get more and more interested in this idea of maybe one day going to grad school. Maybe not this year, but this would be a trial run. I would apply and maybe I could get on the waiting list for the next year, you know? So I started taking more classes. That's why I took organic chemistry. I'm not just a masochist. I did take it with higher purposes in mind. I was also planning to take more biotech and lab classes so that I'd be more comfortable in a lab setting if that ever caught up. And I figured that if worse came to worse, I'll be slightly nerdier than I already am. No big deal. And then, of course, the world ended. Global pandemic, massive social injustice finally getting dealt with, trans rights being revoked, more pandemics, things closing, things opening, people I know getting sick. So the world was a bit of a hot mess. And in the middle of this, I'm just trying to survive organic chem. This is something that I've actually been wanting to talk about for a while, and I've been keeping it close to the chest because at first I didn't believe it myself. Like I didn't think this would ever really happen. You know, it was one of those things that you talk about and you're like, "Oh, wouldn't that be cool, you know, if I could go live in Sweden or Canada? Oh, wouldn't that be cool if I could go live somewhere else? If I could go do these things?" But you don't really expect them. So I should probably cut to the chase of this. I did not expect to be accepted this year. My bachelor's degree took place over 10 years and my GPA was really low. That wasn't a problem. I was already taking credits to help bump me up for next year, so I was prepared, I had a plan, and I would be okay with that. I would be okay with them turning me down. Except they didn't. They didn't turn me down. They said yes. I got into grad school. I got into grad school in Sweden. And I leave in 2 months. In 2 months, I'm flying halfway across the world in the middle of a pandemic with one checked bag and one carry-on, and I'm moving my entire life to a completely different country because I'm going to be a graduate student at the University of Linköping. I'm going to be getting a master's in experimental and medical bioscience. I'm going to grad school.